Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. My name is Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. The war in Ukraine has been going on for 122 days. Tonight, Russian troops carried out a massive missile and bomb attack on Ukrainian cities from the territory of Belarus. This provocation aims to draw Belarus into a war against Ukraine. The explosions could be heard, among others, in Kiev. 6 missiles were also fired towards Lviv. This morning, the Russians fired on the Kiev, Chernihiv and Sumy Oblast from Belarus, informs the head of the office of the president of Ukraine, Andriy Yermak. Ukrainian intelligence warns that this is a provocation aimed at involving Minsk in the war. The Russians have launched dozens of missiles in our territories. They still use the territory of Belarus. They have many missiles, including old ones that are technologically obsolete. Our task is to strengthen the armed forces of Ukraine. We are in constant contact with our allies regarding weapons. Support from other countries is still reaching Ukraine. The M142 HIMARS rocket launchers donated by the U.S. are already participating in the fighting at the front and are helping to defend the country from the Russian invasion. The armed forces of Ukraine, on the other hand, faced new obstacles. Some civilians wrote on social media that the victorious soldiers entered their town. As a result, the army was unable to complete its tasks in Severodonetsk, Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Malar said on Saturday. This takes them precious time, a day or two, during which they could carry out their activities under cover, reporting the course of military operations and informing about it in social media, before the official announcements of the General Staff partially breaks these operations. There is a shortage of food in Mariupol, occupied by Russia. There are several thousand queues at the shops. Meanwhile, Russian forces opened fire from missile systems on the village of Bałabina in the Zaporizhia region. No casualties have been recorded. When the blast took place, the children came running. I grabbed the younger 3-year-old, still wrapped in the quilt. There is no shelter here, so I had to flee to the neighbors. We spent the night underground. The children were terrified. I had difficulty getting them out of the basement. They were crying and sobbing. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going out. They are shooting there. In Kharkiv, Ukrainian forces are still demining the area. The sappers removed a half-ton dud from the roof of an apartment building. Typically, such bombs are used against military industrial facilities. In this particular case, it is a 500-kilogram air bomb. It's been here since March 19th. On March 20th, the fuse was removed and is now safe. If this bomb went off, the entire part of the apartment would be destroyed. On Thursday, the European Council granted Ukraine candidate status to the European Union. President Volodymyr Zelensky referred to this fact again. We say that Ukraine has been granted candidate status for the EU, but let's say that Ukraine has obtained this status. Today we underline the EU's 7 demands. Yes, they are there, but does it scare us? No, because we've met hundreds of requirements before. Let us not forget about it. Let's be proud of ourselves. So far, Russia has lost 34,700 soldiers, 1,511 tanks, 3,645 armored vehicles, 217 aircraft, and 764 artillery systems, among others. Yesterday officially ended the school year, and for many young Poles, the longed-for summer vacation began. Free time, however, does not apply to politicians who travel all over Poland to meet voters, despite the fact that there is still over a year to the elections. During the last Congress, the president of Law and Justice, Jarosław Kaczyński, announced a tour of the party leaders in Poland. Today, he himself met with the inhabitants of the Kujawian-Pomerawian voivodeship, and Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki visited the city of Koło in Greater Poland. We are the party that cares for the homeland, family, patriotism, and traditions. We want to base our actions on this. I think that all Poles want to base their actions on this. Law and Justice announces that it wants to base its program on the ideas of the voters themselves. It is also a time for us to talk to the inhabitants of individual regions about how they perceive the Law and Justice Party activities over the last 2 terms. After 2 years of a pandemic, 4 months of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and Putin's long-term gas blackmail, the price increase is felt by every average citizen. The mood of Polish women and Poles, taking into account high prices, inflation, soaring prices of gas, oil, coal, and thus energy, as well as the gigantic increase in loan installments, make the mood of Polish women and Poles the worst in 18 years. However, not only the Law and Justice Party went off around Poland, mobilization is also underway in opposition. The Civic Platform implements the plan of 1,000 meetings. On the other other hand, during the summer season, two platform leaders organized two separate events aimed at young people: Rafał Trzaskowski, Campus Poland of the Future, and Donald Tusk, Meetup, the new generation of the platform. We know for sure from the previous campus of Rafał Trzaskowski that the campus served to build divisions between Poles, also in the religious context. Experts on the subject claim that political parties start campaigns on the day after each election. All politicians know that far from the capital they can gain an electorate that is very important to them. That is why they are leaving big cities to meet future voters face to face. Voters from smaller centers, more distant from big cities, distrustful of the world of politics, distrustful of the mainstream, the media, and in their case, this mythologized handshake on the part of a politician is more than just a cliché. If one party organizes meetings, the other cannot remain passive. Poll bars put additional pressure on politicians, so that there is not only a one-sided narrative. They check each other. If some people start an action of meeting people, the others cannot sleep through that time, because it will be of little benefit to them when it comes to their position. Parliamentary elections will be held next fall. Experts indicate that official election campaigns will start in spring, although looking at the activity of political parties, the unofficial one is already in full swing. Yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade, ruling that recognized women's constitutional right to abortion, a decision condemned by President Joe Biden that will dramatically change life for millions of women in America and exacerbate growing tensions in a deeply polarized country.
Today is it's not hyperbole to suggest a very solemn moment. Today, the Supreme Court of the United States expressly took away a constitutional right from the American people that it had already recognized. They didn't limit it, they simply took it away. That's never been done to a right so important to so many Americans, but they did it. It's a sad day for the court and for the country.
The court, in a 6-3 ruling, powered by its conservative majority, upheld a Republican-backed Mississippi law that bans abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The vote was 5-4 to overturn Roe, with Chief Justice John Roberts writing separately to say he would have upheld the Mississippi law, but not taken the additional step of erasing the Roe precedent altogether. By erasing abortion as a constitutional right, the ruling restored the ability of states to ban it, fundamentally altering America's landscape on the issue of reproductive rights. 26 states are either certain or considered likely to ban abortion.
This is deadly serious, but we are not going to let this pass. A woman's right to choose reproductive freedom is on the ballot in November. We cannot allow them to take charge so that they can institute their goal, which is to criminalize reproductive freedom.
Some cried tears of joy, others looked downcast and chanted defiantly that the battle was not yet lost, as hundreds of protesters outside the U.S. Supreme Court celebrated or condemned its ruling to overturn the right to an abortion. Anti-abortion activists played music, blew bubbles, and danced to cheer to the decision. Women with unwanted pregnancies in large swaths of America now may face the choice of traveling to another state where the procedure remains legal and available, buying abortion pills online, or having a potentially dangerous illegal abortion. Biden urged Congress to pass a law protecting abortion rights, an unlikely proposition given its partisan divisions. Biden said his administration will protect women's access to medication approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, including pills for contraception and medication abortion, while also combating efforts to restrict women from traveling to other states to obtain abortions. Britain, France, and some other nations called the ruling a step backward, although the Vatican praised it, saying it challenged the world to reflect on life issues. U.S. companies such as Walt Disney, AT&T, and Facebook said they will cover employees' expenses if they now have to travel for abortion services. Today in the afternoon, the Parade for Equality passed through the streets of Warsaw. It was the largest manifestation of LGBTQ+ communities taking place in Polish cities. The most important postulates highlighted during this year's event were the legalization of marriage for same-sex couples, the adoption of children, and the fight against the inequality that people of different sexual orientation have to face in our country. Although among the displayed slogans there were mostly those demanding the right to same-sex marriages, there were also postulates of pro-abortion groups. They demand that abortion on request be allowed, including by minors from the age of 13, without the consent of their parents or guardians. I am most proud of the fact that despite being 14 years old, I am ready to go out on the streets and fight for my rights, despite the fact that I struggle with hate on the internet, and many people do not accept me, and unfortunately in school I am not very accepted and liked due to the way I dress, due to my views, whether or not I have a girlfriend. I believe that the fact that I came here at the age of 14 really tells a lot about me, and I am very proud of it. I'm 15. I also got out here to fight for my rights. At school, many people are intolerant, and once, for example, there was a proposal to celebrate Rainbow Day, and it immediately started hate towards those who proposed it. But despite this, we do not give up and fight for our rights. The colorful procession formed by 32 platforms included Marta Lempart, leader of the so-called women's strike, left-wing party politicians, diplomats, and activists from many countries, including Ukraine and Belarus. I studied in Warsaw at the end of the 1990s. Then I left for Belarus. Now, after 20 years, I am back, and I can see a definite difference, a definite progress. In my opinion, the mere fact that the Parade for Equality can take place in Warsaw proves that Poland is at a sufficient level of civilization for such countries as Russia or Belarus to look at Poland not with a grain of salt, but with respect. I am a person with left-wing views, so I won't talk about homeland patriotism. But as for today's event, objectively speaking, it has to be said that Poland shows a level of tolerance, which you won't find in Russia or Belarus, or perhaps even in Ukraine, where there is a war going on. And that is why everyone chooses their own approach. Everyone fights for their views. I think that in Poland there is an authentic pluralism. There are left-wing views, there are right-wing views, and every person who says otherwise is simply lying. The safe march of the participants of the Warsaw Parade was ensured by numerous police forces, and as it turned out, there were no incidents during the parade. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But for me, it's have a wonderful evening.